It's time to level up your kit. Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to the guild, where we help you be your best nerdy self. Creating fun and exciting garb for Ren Fair, LARP, or even because you think life is too boring and you want to spice it up, is really the cornerstone of nerdy stuff. I mean, playing Dungeons and Dragons and dressing up like Frodo from Lord of the Rings is kind of stereotypical nerd stuff, right? Now, dressing up like established characters is fun, but what if you wanted to take your kit from level 1 and really spice things up? Well, that's exactly what we're doing today. We're going to take your costuming from Ren Fair Basic all the way to a master of kit and clothing. We're going to go over the top 5 tips that I use to take my garb from mundane to magnificent, and use strategies that Hollywood filmmakers use to create memorable clothing for their characters on screen. So, let's get started. Tip number 1. Who is your character? This is a really important question to ask yourself before you ever start putting pieces of your kit together. Who is the character that you're trying to portray? When I was making the garb for Rorik Main, I was trying to come up with a simple yet almost regal kit to display myself as a strong fighter, but also present a welcoming exterior. I wanted to be approachable, but also look like a fighter, with an almost soldier-like exterior. When you're thinking of the person you're trying to portray, ask yourself these 3 questions. Number 1, what does this person do? What kind of lifestyle do they lead? What's their job? What do they need to do that job? What are the 5 things that this character needs to look and perform their best? The things they need to do their job. Finally, what does it look like when you put it all together? Understanding your character's motivations really helps you think of how that character should look. And this leads us into our next tip. Number 2, use a concept board. A concept board is a creative tool that concept artists use to create characters. It's basically just a bunch of inspirational images that you cobble together and pick your favorite parts of. When I was creating the character Rorik Main, I used the concept board for the 2nd iteration of the armor. I took inspiration from the Dawnguard armor from Skyrim's Dawnguard DLC, threw together some pieces that I already had, some stuff that I already got at Ren Fair, and some stuff that I made for the costume. If you can draw out what you want your outfit to look like. If you can use Photoshop, just Photoshop an outfit together. This helps you have a clear idea of how the whole thing should look when it's done. A concept board helps you pull your kit together easier than it would be if you didn't have one. A bonus tip here is to use complementary and tertiary colors. One of the reasons that my kit looks so good is because I used complementary colors. Brown and blue are complementary colors. If you want to take advantage of that, just grab a color wheel and match up colors as you go. Tertiary colors are colors that are directly beside a color, and complementary colors are the ones directly across. Whew, I said colors a lot there. Tip 3, start from the bottom up. Now, what I mean by this is to start with the clothing that your character wears every day. Their shirt and pants, or lack of shirt and pants for those barbarian types, or the dress or gown that your character wears. The simplest way to figure this out is to ask yourself, what kind of clothing does this character wear when they're not out on the town? When they wake up in the morning, what's the first thing that they put on? For Rorik Main, it was a Henley-style linen shirt and a pair of simple brown cloth pants. Then, choose the footwear that best fits that clothing. I chose these tall, multi-buckled boots because I felt like it was the kind of footwear that really represented the kind of character that Rorik is. Once you have the basic outfit down, we can move on to step 4. Choose a focal point. This is easiest to explain with my own outfit. It's clear that the focal point of the outfit is the gambeson, and I structured everything else around that. Now, the focal point doesn't have to be armor. It could be a cowl or a cloak. Just something that clearly displays the answers to the questions that we asked in tip number 1. Nothing screams dastardly rogue like a big dark hood. Likewise, a wizard is clearly a wizard if they're wearing the big droopy hat. And everyone is going to call you a ranger if you have a cloak and a quiver. Understanding what the focal point is helps you build your garb around that centerpiece. If you take my example, the focal point is my gambeson. And using that bonus tip, we can use brown to spice things up. This comes in the form of my brown leather belt, the brown pouch, and my gloves and bracers, not to mention the pants and boots. Building around a focal point is much easier than just trying to mash a bunch of things together. Which brings us to tip number 5, accenting your kit. Think of things that you can add to your kit that make sense but aren't pointless. A great example of this comes from Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings, and actually wasn't even done by Peter Jackson. It was done by Viggo Mortensen, the character who plays Aragorn. During the filming of Lord of the Rings, Viggo came to Peter Jackson and suggested that Aragorn wear a sharpening stone on his belt. His reasoning behind this was before he met up with the hobbits, he was off doing what rangers do, being the bulwark between the monsters of the world and the civilizations of Middle-earth. Because of this, Viggo argued that Aragorn would be using his sword a lot and would need a way to regularly sharpen it. And it didn't make sense if he had it hidden away in a pouch or a bag. Peter Jackson loved the idea so much that he had the sharpening stone added to Aragorn's costume, and it was there for the rest of filming. If you ever notice it, it's clear what its purpose is and why he would have it. Now, a bad example of this also comes from Middle-earth, but it wasn't Peter Jackson doing it. The creators of Rings of Power decided that they wanted a way to make the Hairfolk stand out from the hobbits of Middle-earth more than they already do. To do this, they crafted elaborate lore about the Hairfolk. You see, Hairfolk sow apple seeds into their clothing to represent deceased family members. The idea being that when they die, they return to the earth to nourish plants and stuff, and that the seeds will grow from their bodies and nourish the land. Which is interesting, but also completely pointless. No one noticed these seeds sewn onto their lapel because they're so small, and if they did notice it, they'd actually have to look into the lore of the Hairfolk in order for it to even make sense. If someone has to ask you what a piece of your kit is for, it probably shouldn't be there. Accents should be noticeable and understandable when people look at them. It makes sense for your character to carry a dagger or a tin cup. But if your character is a big, beefy tank covered in armor, it wouldn't make sense for them to have a book strapped to their hip. Even if your big, beefy character loves to read, it wouldn't make sense at first glance. Likewise, if your character is wearing a beautiful gown, why would they be wearing a steel helmet? It would make more sense if your character was wearing other armor and carrying a weapon, but by itself it doesn't. These clashing concepts don't add anything to your character. If anything, they just take away from the cohesion. One last tip I have for you is do not buy costume stuff from Amazon. If you're going to the Renaissance Fair, you're going to be living in this outfit for the day. And I promise you, costume fabric is not gonna feel good. It's hot, it's uncomfortable, and it wasn't made to be clothing. Sure, you're actually gonna spend a little bit more money buying quality pieces of kit, but they're actually gonna feel like clothing and you'll want to wear them again. Now, obviously, all of this is just my opinion. And if you want to ignore all of it and be a rainbow wizard rogue wearing armor, carrying a giant sword and Amazon costume clothing, that's fine. Actually, that would probably still be pretty interesting. Definitely memorable. But the things that make a kit memorable are the things that make you recognizable. If someone's looking for me at the Ren Fair, it's pretty easy for someone to ask, "Hey, have you seen a knight in a blue gambeson?" Or, "Hey, have you seen a ranger with a green cloak?" A good kit stands out against the ordinary and makes a lasting impression. Honestly, a good kit will have people wondering if you're actually part of the act. Can't tell you how many times I got asked that question. All of these tips help you level up your kit and make creating a well thought out costume easier. So just to quickly recap, ask yourself, who is your character? What do they do? What do they need to do it, and what does that look like? What's the concept for your character? Remember to start from the bottom up. Choose your focal point and build around it. And don't forget to choose accents that make sense. That's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and hit the like button and make sure to subscribe. It really helps out the channel. If you'd like to support the channel directly and get your name up here with these wonderful people, then head on over to my website and become a monthly supporter. Not only will you get your name on the screen at the end of every episode, but you'll also have the option of voting on upcoming videos. If you become a top tier supporter, I'll shout you out directly in the video. Link down in the description. But I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you around the guild.